freaking badass.
Cute.
No, the cape is cute. The name is...
I want to go ahead and I want to move on to the next part of my stream, and that is my review for Invincible, Atom Eve, a very special episode of Invincible. And for those that don't know, in this very special prequel episode, a prologue, if you will, to Season 2, this episode focuses on Samantha Atom Eve Wilkins, who discovers her superpowers as a very young girl and must come to terms with her own very, very disturbing and sinister origins as she discovers a family she never knew she had. We were just talking about Robert Kirkman and his work on Invincible, and kind of wanted to start there, just with my overall impressions on the comic. And I have read all of it at this point, and I have seen the original first season of Invincible. And people don't remember, Invincible came out before Ultimate Spider-Man, but they have so many similarities to each other. Of course, Robert Kirkman's Invincible was very much, it felt like a combination between Superman and Spider-Man, right? The best of those characters' respective worlds, and introducing us to the character of Mark Grayson, his father, Nolan, and all the big reveals of that, and this whole new superhero community, and I guess the Image universe, whatever they call it. I'm not sure what they call the universe, Invincible universe. And for so long, I loved that book. It was both a wonderful homage to the comics of the past, but also a critique of those comics as well, and kind of flipped them on their head and provide a lot of consequences. I think at times it definitely got a little edgelordy, and sometimes the things that Robert Kirkman critiqued weren't as well thought out as maybe he thought they were. And I do think the book kind of had a really piss poor ending. But there's so much of that series that I did think that was great. That I did think was wonderful. That had some really great characters in it. It's a series I despite made a couple issues overall, and I think a lackluster ending. It's a series I look back on very fondly, very fondly. And the animated adaptation, which came out in 2021. Of course, that's one of Amazon's shows. And Amazon, you got to give them credit, chat. Their superhero content is definitely going against kind of the grain, going against the norm, is, very violent, very socio-political and topical. And I like that, obviously with The Boys, but also with Invincible. And it just shows you the power of animation. You can tell these very mature, captivating stories in a whole different medium, chat. And I like that. I like when animation is used to tell these kind of the very mature stories. And they made some changes, and I think for the most part, worked pretty well. And I have some criticisms maybe of the show itself, like some of the animation, they were cutting corners and things. But overall, I thought it was a great adaptation, and in some cases, probably better than the book. Honestly, better than the book. Even Robert Kirkman said we're going to make a lot of changes, and I think that's for the best. Even he knows some of his stuff is a little dated, so we're going to modernize a little bit. It's been great. Everyone was talking about that show. Some great scenes, some incredible voice acting, chat. And so, like everyone else, I was very excited for Season 2. I knew it was going to take some time. Animation is hard. It's very, very hard to create, of course. But I was looking forward to it. And I was like, when it was going to come out, it was going to come out. And it's going to come out very soon now, chat. And I think this kind of all took us by surprise. Certainly took me by surprise. This very special episode of Invincible, Atom Eve. And I think you guys were telling me about it like a couple days, and I was like, that's cute. She's getting her own little, probably, I assumed, chat. I'll admit this. I assumed it's it'll be like a 20-minute cute episode of her origin, and we get to learn more about her powers and stuff. It's like, all right, yeah, that's adorable. But then I've been hearing from all you guys saying oh, no. This is like an hour-long episode where we get a really intimate and most of the time very disturbing look into Atom Eve's, Sam Wilkins' origins, her powers. And I was like, oh, okay. And, I was like, all right, well, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and watch this. And I also went ahead and I did audio commentary before I got to edit that. But I'll put that up on the Patreon too, along with probably doing some audio commentaries of the Invincible series in general. Thought I was like, that could be fun with the new series, new season coming out. And first of all, at the top, I just want to say, I think, it's a great reintroduction to the world. With familiar faces, that we see, that we fear from the first season. But at the same time, it does something really, really smart, because even though you might be missing some context as you watch this episode, like if this was your first exposure to Invincible, the whole idea of it, you know, it does a pretty good job of just introducing us to like a whole new storyline with extreme confidence. You can kind of go into this blind to a degree and be like, all right, this is a world full of superheroes and all these different characters, and they're fighting someone called the Lizard League. They look goofy, right? But then there's like initially a much smaller story like happening in between all the action, the bombacity, and then that's the story you primarily follow, which of course is the origins of Atom Eve. And I really liked that. I thought that was really, really cool. And this is not a cute little 20-minute episode. No, this is like 50-plus minutes. This is an hour-long episode, chat, focused primarily on this character. And, you know, I have to say, you know, Atom Eve's life, because I think that was maybe a bit of a criticism, like, of the first season. Okay, again, we're focusing on Mark Grayson for a number of obvious reasons, and his father and that whole family, and that should be focused on. And Atom Eve was definitely there, but she's very much a supporting character, sometimes tertiary character. And maybe even the creators thought, like, you know what? Let's reintroduce people to this world, but let's focus on this character who deserves more of a backstory. And I think that was a very, very, very smart decision, because Atom Eve's life, now what we see of it so far, is fascinating and incredibly sad. You know, we initially see, we literally see her birth, which is already traumatic to begin with, Chad. The circumstances of that are like, wow. Don't want to go into too much detail, so I want, you guys to see that for yourself. It's like, Jesus. But, we initially see her as this very young girl, and, she's, according to her parents, we'll get to by the way, parents, awful. This show makes you love, most of the time, hate the villains, Jen, in the best way possible. Man, parents, fathers, mothers in the world of Invincible, a lot of bad parents in this series is all I'm going to say. But, she's being brought up by these two people, her mother and her father, and they don't understand her at all and are frequently emotionally and psychologically abusive to her. So if that bothers you, buckle up, Buttercup, because there's a lot of that in this episode, but it's handled very well, and you feel invested because of that. But we're introduced to her, and she's a very young girl. She's acting very weird. And I almost thought, they describe her as, look, she's acting weird. Why is she always staring at something? Because she literally is like staring at things, staring at the floor, staring at a tree for an hour, staring at like her Legos, and she's obsessed with certain things. And I almost thought, and I could be wrong, but I almost thought like this was kind of like an allegory for a young child who has autism, and like parents who just have no idea how to handle that and are very dismissive of it and are cruel about it. And I thought that was a pretty mature way to kind of showcase that, right? And again, you like her parents' behavior and their reactions to her make you feel more invested in her, because then it's obvious, like, oh, she's a savant, she's a genius, right? And you have all these other outside characters who maybe even there for a minute, like she has a babysitter who comes in at one point in the episode who's just, I'm gonna study, play with your Legos, and she's like, okay, play with my Legos, and he is just working on his, chemistry and physics homework, and he's got to study too for his test, and she's able to figure all this out, and he's like, oh my God, and he spends like the entire evening like working with her, and it's brilliant. He recognizes like, your daughter's a genius, and the dad's like, she's a weirdo. It's like, no, you idiot, no, you fat fuck, she's amazing. And so like that is really cool, and you get to see her learn to use her powers, discover them, be elated. It's such a beautiful moment. But then you also see just some crushing, tragic things that also surround the discovery of her powers, and how that connects to the only friend she ever really had growing up. And it's like, damn, you feel really, really invested. And I have to say, like, one of my criticisms of season one is some of the animation was a little rough because they were really cutting corners and saving their animation budget for those really big bombastic sequences, especially between like Mark and Omni-Man, right? And those scenes are all great. Those action scenes, amazing. They go all out in this episode. Like, again, I'm just coming off of watching this maybe a few hours ago, but I didn't see any animation errors, and the level of choreography for this episode is spectacular. And they have so much of her powers. People don't know she's literally able to physically create matter from the molecules in the air. Can create anything or manipulate certain inanimate objects. And they have so much fun with that. You know, again, you just see her elation and just the surprise and the kindness in her eyes. She's like, oh, wow. But then you see her use those abilities like in certain fight sequences and things, and it is so cool to watch, horrifying in a lot of cases too. Especially for some of the people that she goes up against, which we'll get to in just a bit. But I was very impressed with the animation this episode and how they used her power set, because you realize, like, wow, she is, like, incredibly powerful. Like, literally, like, one of the strongest heroes, like, ever, like, within this world, especially when she can potentially reach, you know, her ultimate level of power. Atom Eve herself, like, so they don't, Jillian Jacobs, I think, is not like voicing her in this episode. Maybe I'm trying to think. Like, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. Like, you have two actors that voice Sam, later Atom Eve. Aria Kane, who plays the 7-year-old version of her, and then Jaslyn Ion, who plays, who plays the 12-year-old version of her, and they both do a great job. Their voice performances are, you're instantly charmed by her, you care about her, and you hate what she's going through, and they do a great job of covering just the spectrum of emotion with Eve. Thought that was great. Thought that was really, really good. I was like, I didn't realize like who the supporting cast was initially as I was watching it, but Stephen Root, chat, my favorite character actor working today. Stephen Root, you've seen him in Barry, plays Fuchs and Barry, and of course he has a long history of voicing animated characters. Obviously, Bill from King of the Hill. He plays a character named Dr. Brandyworth, who has who is a part of like the origin, the creation of Atom Eve, and he's great. Love the interactions between him and Atom Eve, and he's a very interesting character with his own tragic backstory, chat, and you feel for him throughout this entire thing, and I loved the role in which he played. He does deliver exposition, but he then has these moments of humanity, which I really liked. The late great Lance Reddick is in this episode, chat. I mean, I wonder if this is one of the last things he recorded. I know, of course, Lance Reddick, who has been, I mean, you've seen him in The Wire. He's popped up in a lot of things, over the decades, chatting. But he's also done a lot of voice work for animated shows. Most recently, Vox Machina, chat, Bubbles, and he's been Horizon, and he voices a character named Mr. Erickson. He's kind of like the primary villain in this. He's a bastard. He's a son of a bitch in this episode, chat. But he does a good job too. The other guest star, we and I don't want to say too much, but we have Jacob Tremblay, who you guys have seen multiple stuff. He's a very talented kid. He voices a character named Phase 2. And I don't want to say too much because I want you to be shocked by it, but my God, the phase, him voicing Phase 2 and the reveal of these other characters called Phase 3, Phase 4, Phase 5, extraordinarily disturbing. And made me uncomfortable watching. I'm like someone who likes body horror. I'm just like, God damn it. Loved it. And like all I'll say is like his back and forth with Atom Eve later on, the episode's last third, great, and some beautiful animation. I mean, beautiful in that it is just so grotesque to watch. It's disturbing. Him and his compatriots have a disturbing superpower, and it's gross. But I liked it. I liked it quite a bit. And again, like I said, the animation is beautiful. It's fun. It's wonderfully choreographed, but very terrifying, very disturbing, and they do not hide from the body horror, And again, I think this acts as just like a great prologue to season 2. It got me even more excited. I was already looking forward to it. I can't wait for season 2. Looking forward to it. But after watching this episode, I was like, holy shit, give it to me now. Like they must have knew that they had something with this, and like, hey, let's go ahead and give this to the people, and it'll whet their appetite. And it certainly did with mine. But the thing is, it's not how I initially thought it was going to be. Like, there's 20-minute whatever episode. It's like an hour long. It provides much more depth and characterization for Atom Eve, / Sam Wilkins, right? And it also says like, all right, yeah, and we also know you're interested to see what this other character was doing around this same time, and we're gonna show them off briefly, and yes, it's gonna obviously lead into what we'll later see in season 2, and I thought it was great. I was very impressed by it, chat. Yeah, I highly recommend it. Check it out as soon as you can if you have Amazon chat, and it's gonna make you very excited for Invincible. And I'm hoping that they're going to be changing things, up now for season 2 as they did with this episode, and obviously of season 1, and because I feel like they're really confident with what they have. It just came across to me like within certainly about the half-hour mark. I was like, God damn, you're doing some amazing things. So loved it, absolutely loved the chat. Highly recommend it. Makes me excited for season 2, especially what they're going to do with characters like Ainstrom Levy and obviously the return of Omni-Man. What about you guys? What did you think of the very special episode of Invincible, Atom Eve?
I hope everyone enjoyed the video, and I want to take the time to tell you about my Patreon, Class in the Glass, which offers hundreds of film commentaries and video reactions to numerous movies, TV shows, and cartoons. If you're a fan of shows like Batman the Animated Series and Avatar: The Last Airbender, or films like Aliens and Raiders of the Lost Ark, my Patreon is the platform for you. Currently, I'm doing a subathon to reach 75 subs on the platform. If we hit 75 subs, we'll be able to start voting on the next edited YouTube reaction, which will include actual clips and scenes from the movies and shows I comment over. Choose from such films as Fire and Ice, Masters of the Universe, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, or Spawn. Subscribing at any tier level is appreciated, and feel free to give feedback at any time. Thank you again for watching the video, and see you next time.